Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for being here at this webinar. I'm really excited to have this conversation today. Our philosophy has always been as a commercial mortgage brokerage to really add value as much as we can to our clients in whatever way we can, whether it's within financing or outside of it. And this has been sort of a really a wonderful connection, Chandra. When we connected a few years ago and we learned about what you did, we introduced you to our client Benoit, who folks will hear from a little later on their project as in terms of the case study. So yeah, really looking forward to it, and we'll do a couple of housekeeping announcements and get right into it. So in terms of housekeeping, a few things. This is going to be recorded, so for those that wanted to take notes, if anyone isn't able to make it for parts of this will be recorded. We'll send out the recording after the fact, so no worries there. We also wanted to say if there's any people have questions, put them in the chat. There's, I think, a specific chat for questions. Put them in there, and we have a good segment of time that we'll work through and address questions. So with that, let's get rolling. So Chandra, tell us more. When did Efficiency Capital start? What prompted you to start it? And what was your background before? Fill us in.
Yep. Thanks for this question, Nadeem. But before I answer your question, I do have some good news to share. Today, we've been working across the country for the last many years, but today we officially launched a formal partnership in the Greater Montreal region with the Fond Climat Greater Montreal, our Greater Montreal Climate Fund. They are our local partner. We announced a multi-residential program to retrofit a lot of the older buildings over there. So that just went out literally an hour ago. So I'm really excited that I'm sharing this in this forum. So
amazing, perfect timing. Congratulations on that, Chandra. Fantastic.
Thank you. And I think Benoit would probably relate to it because Montreal is still home for him.
Well, I'm still French from France, but
yeah.
I lived 10 years in Montreal, so I definitely want to join the market. So good news. Congratulations.
Thank you. And okay, let's get to your question. When did Efficiency Capital launch? Efficiency Capital actually was launched in 2015, almost 10 years ago. And actually more than 10 years ago now. Literally, we are in June already. So, but the journey to get to the start of Efficiency Capital actually had two parallel tracks. One was a track outside the country, another was in Canada. So and that goes to the other question you asked, what is my background? I'm a banker, investor. And around 2007-8, I used to basically run a large family office investment side of things. And this company had about billions of dollars in assets. And our goal was to actually go and diversify that asset pool. We made a bunch of investments across the world. And but as they say, a lot of things which go up has to come down. And 2008, the financial crisis happened. From becoming buyers, everyone had to become sellers. And my goal at that point in time was to figure out how we are going to unwind a lot of the investments we made. And I was asked to go and run one of the entities we invested into. This was a British entity. You got to pay for your sins sometimes, right? And so this is what happened. I had to go run the turnaround that company I invested into. This was, as I said, this was the world's oldest clean energy firm. Significant position in renewable energy, strong pedigree. And at that point in time, they had, they were loss making, let's put it that way, to as simply put. And we had to figure out how we were going to make them profit making. And 2009, 2010 was not the best time to focus on renewable energy in Europe or any other part of the world. All governments were renegotiating all the contracts, the feed-in tariff contracts, and so on and so forth. So one of my engineers suggested, let's look at energy efficiency. We'll make money in 1 or 2 years. And I'm the money guy. And I'm like, how are you going to make 50% returns here, right? And so they challenged us. We went to one of our clients, a large automotive manufacturing facility, a global manufacturer. And after a few months, we identified $8 million in annual savings. And when we took it to the client, the first reaction was disbelief. Then they looked at our analysis and they said, yeah, this works. This can be done. We are going to go and get some money from our finance team to make this work. A few months later, they came to us and said, sorry, $0 allotted. So that was my first reaction, first realization that you actually had a lot of opportunities within manufacturing facilities, within buildings, within businesses to invest third-party capital and make things work. So that started my journey. Parallelly, in Toronto, there was an agency of the city called the Atmospheric Fund, or TAF, as many people know. Today, it's a regional climate agency with funding also from the federal government and the provincial government. But their mandate at that point in time was to reduce GHG emissions in the greater Toronto region. And they looked at the whole overall emissions pattern. Over 50% of emissions were coming from buildings, and mostly due to energy. So they said, okay, if we can make the building owners reduce their energy consumption, we are helping the building owners because their costs are going down and the value goes up. But we are also helping the environment. That was the way they were thinking. And they, like typical government organizations, they tried to train people, educate people, incentivize people. 2 years, 3 years later, nothing happened. As we all know, there are a lot of reasons why building owners don't do upgrades, not just because of money, right? So they said, okay, let's find out why people are not doing this. They went and partnered with BOMA, the Building Owners and Managers Association. And they basically said, okay, what are the reasons people are not doing? And it came to 3 main things: capital, confidence, and capacity. When I say capital, it means that many people either don't have the capital, or even if they have the capital, they would go and buy the next building, not put it in retrofitting a building. The confidence piece comes to risk. All of us here have heard stories of, oh, a boiler guy comes and says, change your boiler, you will get 30% savings, 40% savings. But do you really see those savings happening on the ground in your mind, right? Because you can't measure it easily. Most people don't know if it's actually achieving it or not. Maybe it is achieving. Maybe it's doing even better, but you don't really know. So the lack of visibility, that risk element, further reduced the amount of money coming into this. And the final piece is capacity. Almost all building owners and managers are really struggling with capacity. They're managing multiple properties, or they are trying to keep their heads above water. They rarely have the ability to think about a full-scale retrofit, deep retrofit of their properties. So the whole idea was that you have to solve for the capital, confidence, and capacity. So TAF created a program, and they tried it in a bunch of the city-owned buildings. And they said, oh, this works fine. And now we can roll it out, we can scale it up. But TAF really their mandate was not to scale up things, was not to go beyond Toronto and so on and so forth. They said, okay, let's set up Efficiency Capital, a private company. So that's how Efficiency Capital was born. I was coming into the country at the same time. So I and business partner, Matt Zipchen, we joined hands with the staff and launched Efficiency Capital. That's the long story of how Efficiency Capital was born.
Amazing. That's a great background. I appreciate it, and I like the 3 C's. Easy to remember: capital, confidence, capacity. That's nicely done. Remind us when it was that it was launched. What year?
2015.
2015.
10 years
Amazing.
ago.
So decade. Amazing. So look, a lot of our audience members are owners and developers of multifamily properties. And a very popular financing strategy that we've been really active with is the CMHC MLI Select program, which has energy efficiency as one of the requirements to get points and qualify for the program. So my understanding, Chandra, and please help us clarify this, is that instead of one of the big value propositions here is instead of borrowers and owners of these buildings and developers of these buildings spending their own capital to do these energy efficiency upgrades, instead, Efficiency Capital can essentially buy the equipment, and then the client pays Efficiency Capital based on a percentage of the actual or projected savings. So is that accurate? Do I have that right? And can you expand on that a little bit, Chandra?
Big picture, you're right. So a few things. One of the biggest challenges when you work with MLI Select is that there are restrictions in terms of your debt service coverage ratio, DSCR, in terms of like the overall piece, right? It's about GHG emissions reductions, how many points you get for this, and so on and so forth. And any money which you go to take to upgrade your property counts against your loans under DSCR. So the methodology we use is called the service approach, energy as a service approach. And this approach does not get treated as a loan in your balance sheet. I'll give the example of the photocopier. A lot of us here, I assume, are old enough to remember those days 20 years ago when we used to buy a photocopier and then buy the ink, buy the paper, and so on and so forth. Today, no one buys the photocopier. So the photocopier comes and gets dropped into your office, and you just pay for the use of the photocopier. That exact same service approach, you pay for the use, is the methodology we follow for energy as a service. The only difference in energy as a service is that there is a lot of capital required, so we actually put in a lot of the capital and add technology on top of it. Putting just technology in old assets is not going to work. So that's the reason why I do this approach. So I'll give you an example. I told you about the 3 C's, which we need to solve for, right? And so let's say this building you have is spending $500,000 in utility cost. We know it can be brought down to say 300,000 or 40%. But to save the $200,000 a year, someone has to invest $1 million. Normally, the building owner does. In this case, we would go put in the $1 million, and we will get paid. We'll generate the 200,000 savings and then get paid a fee, which will be lower than the 200,000. It could be a fixed 150,000, or it could be 75% of the total savings, or there are different methodologies we follow. And that's the approach, okay? One important element I want to say, and this was a conversation I was having with Benoit yesterday. There are 5 elements which any building owner has to go through to get through this MLI Select program. First step is I need to know I'm receiving 40%, 25%, whatever that number is. So you need to hire a energy auditor who would come and do the analysis and tell you. That's step 1. Now you've identified, okay, I'm going to change 5 of these equipment. Now you need to have someone who will come and do all the design work for you. Okay, you're pulling out the boilers and putting in a heat pump or whatever it is, right? Let's say. So you need to find a design engineer, and then you need to find a contractor who will do all the work for you. And then you need to maintain those assets over a period of time. And in addition to all of this, you also need to find the money. What Efficiency Capital does, we do all of those 5 steps rolled into one. Okay, single stop shop. And that's typically how we do work.
Amazing. That's great. And I really like the concept, energy as a service. The photocopier example was a really, really good one for me to at least understand sort of the commonality. So thanks for that. So tell me more, China. Let's dig into this. So how does Efficiency Capital secure its interest in the equipment? Because I know one of the questions that's coming to the minds of a lot of the audience right now is this going to be a second mortgage? So tell us more.
Yeah, our approach is, if you're going to pay for the use of equipment, we own the equipment and we give it to you for a use, and you pay us a service fee. Because we own the equipment, we own the lights, when we also do a lot of water upgrades, we actually own the toilets on paper, right? We own the heat pumps, and we own a lot of the HVAC systems and so on and so forth. And we don't put a mortgage as a general rule on the property, okay? Having said and done that, we also have to be very worried about credit risk. So we have created some backup structures, right? In case there is a default, how do we step in and so on and so forth, right? But as a general rule, we don't put any mortgage, and that's why it doesn't show up on your mortgage register. CMHC doesn't know that you actually have a service agreement or anything else for that matter. Okay, what we do indeed do is a registration on the PPSA register to indicate to people that we actually own certain equipment in the building. So you go and buy a sofa, and pay them in installments, the sofa vendor would actually go and the register a PPA. It's the same concept for us.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. And I know from my experience, because we just completed a project here, we'll get into the case study with Benoit, but I know from my experience, it didn't impact the mortgage that was placed, which is great. And so tell us more, how long is this arrangement for? You know, that is there a point in time a buyer can, or the borrower can buy out the equipment and own it? Maybe fill us in.
Yep. So a lot of these upgrades typically take a long time to pay. I gave examples of heat pumps and stuff like that, but there are also things. We do windows, we do roofs, we put in solar systems on the roof, we put in EV charging, we do a lot of these. And a lot of them have long-term payback requirements. And so we do typically tend to go up to 20 years in most cases. There are specific systems we can go beyond 20 years to 25 or 30 years as well. But and we also don't keep changing our, like, it's not like a financing thing. You don't pay us a rate or anything of the sort. Like, we don't refinance after 5 years. It's a single 20-year agreement. And that 20-year agreement, you keep paying a fixed amount every year. And that amount, like, if 5 years down the line, let's say you want to refinance that building or sell that building, we give you the option to buy us out at any point in time, okay, with very minimal penalty. There's a small break fee, but it is so small that I mean, and Benoit can talk about it because it doesn't impact any of those requirements. So that's typically how we do it. We recognize that most building owners are not in this further for long term. The average ownership of real estate in Canada is 7 years. So us doing a 20-year agreement means that we give people the opportunity to buy us out, or we transfer it to the next owner, as long as we are comfortable with their credit position. So you can transfer it as well.
Right. Amazing. Okay. That's great. And so, you know, like if a borrower is considering paying for the equipment in cash and they're comparing it to the option of using Efficiency Capital Energy as a Service, you know, is there some guideline you can provide to the audience to advise sort of like, you know, is there an effective cost to the borrower? You know, what's the premium they're paying for, you know, for the service versus paying cash?
So good question. I would say we typically substitute the equity requirement as opposed to the loan requirement. You can go and take a CMHC loan in full, and then we come in afterwards. So we are effectively taking away money which the owner needs to put in. And the typical ownership's equity requirements are over 15%. In many cases, even higher, depending upon where they are, right? Our costs are much lower. We go to a very specialized class of investors who support us, and they basically reward us for getting GHG outcomes. So we actually have a tiered rate. The higher the GHG reduction, the lower the rate, and so on and so forth. So the rate we typically, the return we expect is a combination of 2 or 3 things. It's a combination of how much GHG you reduce, what is the credit risk we are taking, what type of security we get, and so on and so forth. But typically it ranges from somewhere in the mid single digits to the low double digits. As you can see, it's very competitive. Right. And Benoit can say that when he was doing did his first projects with us, he's currently got 14 buildings with us right now. Okay. And when at that point, their first reaction was about, are you going to be cheaper than my bank? And that's how they started this whole conversation. He no longer asked that question, but that's how it started. So we are very competitive from a pricing perspective, definitely.
Fantastic. And I would imagine as well, Chandra, with the experience that you bring to the table, that there's probably some additional value you can add to clients, you know, even putting costs aside. And I think potentially there may be some savings too from our earlier conversations as well.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of, there are 2 other specific savings I would add. One is our ability to buy in bulk. Every building owner typically retrofits 1, 2 buildings, 10 buildings a year. Currently we are doing 50, 100 buildings, 50, tens of buildings. And we are in the process of getting to hundreds of buildings every year retrofits. And we do this across the country. So our ability to buy at scale is significant. So currently we have a heat pump partnership with Mitsubishi. They give us up to 12-year warranties. Okay. And it's not unheard of. And we pass through everything through to the client. We don't charge any markup. The client, we buy it at 100, the project gets it at 100. So there is zero markup on top of it. So all the benefits we get, if the client were to go and buy it, they will buy it for 120. We will buy it at 100 and give it to them at 100. So that's the bulk ability to buy. So the first project we did for Benoit, the equipment costs were 30% lower. Okay, and there are some reasons why it was 30% lower. It's not a normal thing. In this case, we actually changed the solution a little bit and so on and so forth there. But 10% or thereabouts is generally very, very possible. That's one. The second most important thing is the nature of the real estate business. As a real estate owner, you can't be HST registered. Rent is not a HST registrable or a GST registrable service. So all the equipment you buy, you pay for the HST, and that becomes your cost. So depending on the province you are in, you're paying, instead of 100, you're paying 113, 115, 112, 105, right? And so on and so forth. While you can claim, for us, it's a service. So we take the benefit of the HST credit. We get the refunds and give it back to you. And that's the second big benefit. So you can easily save between the two streams you're talking about over 20% as a general rule.
Outstanding. And so tell us about some of the geographies that Efficiency Capital services. I know we have a case study in New Brunswick. I believe you're based in the GTA. But fill us in on the geographies across the country, as well as like project sizes that you're able to take on.
Yeah. We work across the country. We are currently doing projects in Nova Scotia all the way to Vancouver Island. We are evaluating projects in Northwestern Territories and Yukon as we speak. So across the country, we have some of the owners are also own properties in other parts of the world, so they've approached us. We haven't yet done this because we are so busy, just focused on Canada. We're still a small team, and so yes, there is a lot of we can cover a lot of land. More importantly, we do all types of projects. Anything that impacts your utility cost, water cost, electricity cost, gas cost. That is something we would do. If you want to put in many a times to do the solar upgrade, you need to put a solar on your rooftop, you need to upgrade the roof. You would pay for the roof upgrades as well. That's what we did in the case of Benoit's properties. And so on and so forth. And in terms of I think there is another question you'd asked me.
I was saying geography and then project size. So like, is there a minimum project size?
Yeah, typically we like to focus on projects $500,000 and above as a general rule, but we also look at portfolio approach. You got 5 properties, each of them needing 300, 400,000. That can work for us.
Right, fantastic. And then the other thing as well, as I know we mentioned briefly, that in addition to energy efficiency, you may also be able to help with accessibility. Maybe if you could spend just a moment telling us about that as well, because that's really interesting too.
Yep. I know that MLI Select has basically been changing their parameters. It used to be 100 points for efficiency. Now it's 50 points. And so there are conversations about that going down even further. So the whole idea here is that accessibility is becoming more and more important from a client perspective. Our philosophy is we need to give the client what they need rather than what we have. So we recently started looking into accessibility as a service. So we'll go and adapt the kitchens. We have looked at, I've talked to Benoit about this. We have some of our clients are actually working to do modular kitchens, which can be moved and changed in height. So they build it accessible ready rather than fully accessible. So you have a regular client, a regular tenant coming in, you keep it at normal height. If tomorrow you need someone with accessibility needs, you move it down or move it up, depending on how you want it, right? So those are type of things. We have a lot of experience working with clients like this. So we would add accessibility needs as well as we go along.
Amazing. And then tell us more, aside from multifamily rental, if someone's looking at a for sale condo project, or if they're looking at retail or industrial, could some of your solutions work for those kind of projects too? And building
Yes, very much so. So we currently are working with a large national chain of this thing. We haven't yet formally announced it, but there are two national chains. One's got a few thousand stores. So we're doing the first 10 of their stores in pilot phase. The other one, we have already signed a contract and we are in the process of executing the project. There are four of those projects in the GTA region. We are doing this, and then the goal is to roll it out nationally. So that's like a light industrial type thing. One is a light industrial, another is a retail. So that's those type of things we do. We work on commercial projects, offices, hotels, a lot of those type of things. In fact, the first project which staff did in 2012 was actually a shopping center. We've done car dealerships, right? And so on and so forth. So those are all things we can do. And we can do a variety of things. As I said, EV charging is becoming a big thing. Battery storage is becoming a big thing. So all of those can be rolled into this.
Fantastic. And ground up construction as well, I'd imagine. Condo projects,
ground up
essentially?
constructions can be done. So our philosophy we started in the retrofit world. Our model is equally applicable to new builds as we speak, right? We haven't done a lot. We did a pilot, a few pilots. We did a few pilots with Windmill, with Tridal, and a lot of those about 7-8 years ago. And then when the whole Condo Act changed in Ontario, we sort of pulled back. Now we are going back into new builds because that's becoming a much more active piece. And there we can actually own the entire electrical mechanical infrastructure and take away the cost of the overall project away from building owners.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's great. Any final comments, Chandra? Otherwise, we'll get into the case study, and I'm sure there'll be more there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it. I would the only thing I would say here is that one of the biggest challenges we used to face when we started was, you got to be kidding me. This is too good to be true, right? What's the catch? We never hear this anymore. Okay, we've been around enough. A lot of governmental, cities and stuff like that are actually working with us. We are currently working with a municipal client in Northern Ontario as we speak. So there are lots of people have started believing in it. All I'm trying to say here is that just because it's new, it doesn't mean it's bad. There can be a lot of good things with new stuff as well.
Amazing, amazing. So that's perfect segue. So I'm just going to tee up the projects that you and Benoit and myself worked on, and we'll just have a couple of slides to quickly share, and then Benoit will get into some questions, and I'm excited to hear your perspective as well. So we should be having some slides show up on the screen. So we'll just do a quick MLI Select overview in about 30 seconds or less for those that aren't familiar with it. So over to the next slide, if I could. Just as a reminder, there's 3 social outcomes: affordability, energy efficiency, and accessibility. The 2 social outcomes that are required by CMHC that we're covering today are energy efficiency and accessibility. Affordability is a separate one here. And then moving on, as a reminder, Chandra mentioned this briefly, really if we look at the different point levels, they give you different benefits in the program. And at the top end of the program, you could get up to 95% leverage and a 50-year amortization with some of the lowest premiums in the program. So that's a quick overview there. Remember, as Chandra mentioned earlier, for energy efficiency, you can get anywhere from 20 to 50 points on existing properties based on a 15 to 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and energy efficiency compared to current performance. And then for new construction, it's just relative to the building code, how much more efficient you are. As Chandra mentioned as well, energy auditor needs to confirm that that energy efficiency savings ahead of time, or the projected savings, and they either need to be completed in the previous 12 months prior to applying for the loan, or in the following 24 months, following the loan if you're using your own sources to complete the energy efficiency. So let's get into the actual project. So there's two projects. This was in New Brunswick, in a small center in New Brunswick, which was actually also interesting because sometimes remote centers can be challenging for different groups to get into. But this was a great example of something that was a smaller center. So about $12 million in the first loan and about $3 million in the second loan. 89% of purchase price in the first project and 85% loan to value in the second one. The interest rates were around 3.7% as of today. 50-year amortizations. This was when energy efficiency was giving you 100 points to the program. Now it's giving you 50 points, but that's how that works. And the energy efficiency upgrades range from lighting, interior, exterior lighting controls, low flow plumbing fixtures, programmable thermostats, roof insulation, centralized air to water heat pumps, closed loop solar photovoltaic. I think that's your solar panels, and then backup gas boiler systems for cold weather. So also some ductless heat pumps in the other building, some attic insulation, some energy efficient appliances, and a heat recovery ventilation system. So quite a broad variety of measures here. These loans funded in November 2022 and July 2023. And in that time, the borrower Benoit had 24 months to get these efficiency upgrades done, and they were completed within that timeline not too long ago. So we're excited to be able to share it now that the project's actually completed. So I think that's it for our slides, Benoit. Nice to chat again. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your background in real estate before we get into the buildings.
Thanks for the opportunity to join this webinar today. Again, we've been working closely the last 5 years together. Again, I cannot mention more the support and the strategic support that your team and now Chandra's as well has been providing to our group. So thanks guys.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, on my end, so I come from, you can hear the accent, I come from France, 25 years in Canada. I have 3 careers. First one is financial engineering, the second in project management in mega projects, and the third one is real estate, essentially. So which was my dream to transition to do this as a business. So I've been investing evening and weekend for the last 20 years, and it took a long time before I understand the full spectrum of financing and how to be nimble in real estate investing. So like I said, I work in strategic risk management at first. I work in banking, supported treasury departments. I was the first risk manager for KPMG back in the day, 20 years ago in Montreal. Yeah, doesn't bring us younger. What else? Also key, I worked, like I said, in Toronto for SNC-Lavalin. This was, in fact, my second career. I learned to become an engineer without being one. So I had to focus on the business side of things, which is prime contract management, project risk management, and project control. This brought me back to Vancouver, where I live now. I was the CEO of the Canada Line at some point, which is a PPP project, so a $2 billion transit projects, which is a SkyTrain from the airport to downtown Vancouver. And that was the end of my corporate life. So I finally was able to leave real estate and breathe real estate, and not only evening and weekends. So I joined a real estate developer first, just to get understanding of how people work locally in new construction, and I realized the risk profile was not adequate in my view. Condo developments, you have to time the market, and if you lose the cycle, you may be belly up and you don't control it. So this is, for me, that was the center point of what we are doing today, which is transitioning from asset appreciation to cash flow strategy. So cash flow is rental, and this is what I've been doing. So first, acquisition of existing assets. So I launched my company 5 years ago, since Sidon Properties. Since then, I met quality partners, in BC first, Nico and Maria Bautista, not to name them, and also in East Coast, Hermel and Rachel Godbout, who has been instrumental in our growth also locally. So yeah, in a nutshell, focused on cash flow, purchased the goal was to catch up. How can we execute quick? And because I finally understood how this acquiring existing asset of multifamily, larger scale, and how to grow with other people's money. So there was a lot. The puzzle was there's a lot of it's very complex to gravitate in this. And now if you add CMHC and put the social outcome commitment, like you mentioned, the three levels: affordability, accessibility, and energy optimization. And when we always talk about the energy reduction, but a big component is both. You need to meet the energy reduction, but also the GSG reduction. And in many, we'll talk about this in more detail in the example, but in some provinces, it is very difficult to achieve both. You can do one, you can do both, you can do the other with different strategies, and combining the two is very difficult. So anyway, bottom line is I focus on acquiring existing assets, and that was because you can control the execution. It's a faster execution, and I focused on value add assets for the last 4 years, and since we started to incorporate also new construction now, and we have, so roughly our portfolio is 400 units of existing asset and 300 units under construction at different stage of planning and construction. So we operate, and I say we because, like I said, we are different teams. The group is pan-Canadian. We operate in BC, Alberta, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. So that's
Fantastic. And yeah, fantastic. And I do want to add, Benoit, I know when we first met 5 years ago, we were talking about financing a 6-unit building in Vancouver Island, and you've just exploded in growth, and it's been such a fun journey to go on together. So congratulations on that. That's amazing.
like I said,
An amazing
without your
achievement.
help, it would not have been possible. So thank you.
Fantastic. So look, tell us about your key motivation to, after we introduced you to Efficiency Capital into Chandra, what was your key motivation to use them? What was sort of the main driver for you to go ahead with working with them?
So first, I want to talk about the context a little bit for what we do. We talked about focusing on we specialize in purpose-built rentals, existing and new construction. All our project has been financed with MLI Select, so that's also a big component. Is we also must. The flip side of this is, yes, you get 50 years amortization, high loan to value, but you need a social outcome. So then it becomes very technical. It's no more only financing. You need to find support, expand your team, and have experts across Canada. And now this is the next challenge. At each location, find the support. Our business has been relying on investors in order to scale. This is the only way you can recycle your capital as much until you can't. And so we virtually built a private equity real estate investment firm in order to use other people's money, leverage, and try to be a win-win across the board from the community. So the tenant, obviously, we have to start there, and then the investors and ourselves, and at the macro level now across Canada, because now we are delivering also the vision of CMHC, which is great to be a part of the solution. So then there's also challenge, so you talk about the motivation. There's a lot of challenge, which are delivering. We talked about this 40% of energy reduction, and also at the same time 40% of GSG is not easy in all locations. Some are straightforward. For example, BC is more easy, but in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia or even Alberta, it's not the same. It's opposite result depending on the solution you do. So this is having a good team is important. The energy rebates also are changing all the time, so it's hard to keep track and to leverage the full benefit. And finally, equity energy providers like NB Power or BC Hydro or other players like that also change legislation. So it's very hard also to gravitate, and it can become very quickly a full-time job. And now you become distracted from what you do. So you ask me the motivation again is Chandra talked about the one-stop shop. Definitely it was appealing to us. Being able to delegate to a group of experts is also, very appealing. Whether as expert in the energy sphere, but also as finance people, because it's now you need to combine both expertise in order to deliver a good solution. And also, like I said, in order to replace, to not have to raise equity for investors, this prevented to let's say differently, it optimized their equity, their return on equity, and prevented dilution. So massive, massive benefit in our business model, essentially.
Right. That makes sense. And so that's just so maybe like I think Chandra mentioned briefly that the initial plans you had were tweaked slightly after working with Efficiency Capital. Maybe could you speak to that a little bit in terms of what you were initially thinking and then where you ended up and how you worked with Efficiency Capital to get you to the end result?
Which what are you referring to? Excuse me.
I mean, like I guess like maybe initially you might have been planning to do certain types of
Oh,
improvements, like, and then it changed a little bit after consulting with Chandra.
okay, so fair point. Especially if we talk about size. So there's two projects you referred initially, and SAC, we call it, the nickname is SAC 2, SAC 1 and SAC 2. So SAC 1 because we're based in Sackville, large operation, it happened that we have been growing in this, suburb of Moncton, New Brunswick. And we've become probably one of the biggest operator in the city by accident. And in fact, we're happy to be there. So it's also one of the largest university or oldest university in Canada. So we have now a large operation of a student rental. So this one of the acquisitions, the SAC, let's say SAC 2 is more interesting because for the challenge, the technical challenge, it is 82 units. So it has 6 buildings, all probably mostly 3 bedrooms, so we have a lot of units, probably 300 units, if you look on the room side. Yeah, and very, very busy. So bottom line, we started with a first commitment, a plan to
I think we might have lost Benoit there. Benoit,
Yeah,
can you still hear me?
yeah, I think we may have
May
lost
Yeah,
Benoit.
maybe Chandra,
I
you wanna
will, I
speak
will,
to
I
maybe
will, I will
your
give some background as
yeah,
it comes up.
yeah, sounds good.
So this was so one of the basic changes in the SAC2 project was the initial plan was to use regular R2R heat pumps, and these were going to be individual unit at every single unit level. But we found that there was going to be more expensive, and also it's going. I see Benoit seems to have come back in.
Here we
Benoit, can you
go.
hear us?
Yes, the
Okay, I'm going to
computer
basically
disappeared.
let you take over from here. I was just starting to step in for you.
Now it's my camera. You see, sometimes it's very odd. Apologize. I don't
No,
know what
no
happened.
worries, but we can hear you, so you could keep talking.
Okay, so at least you see my face at the beginning. Sorry,
Yeah,
guys. Technical
all good.
issues with them. So yes, so this project we started with what we I come like I said, I worked with SNC before, so the task I thought was it's another project like compared to another, and but it is significant. So first we started to look at a preliminary analysis, from EnerCheck, which did the first model, and gave us, in fact, the roadmap for to meet the 40% energy savings and GSG. So that was great. But now after comes to the implementation, so the initial plan versus finding the contractors, managing the project, troubleshooting the issues. And it came very quickly to our knowledge that this project was a beast, essentially. So so the budget first was already keep creeping up, because contractors didn't know release a solution. It was the first time in the Maritimes that we did air-to-water solutions, centralized heat pump solutions in a building. So just that is a big issue. And so very quickly we realized that we needed help essentially, you know. So we needed strong consultants. We needed to project managers. We needed I would say a larger team, much larger team in order to just manage this project. And we were already very busy with our day-to-day, you know. So a project like that is a huge distraction essentially, and this may impact our operation, the tenants, support, or even the investors at the end of the day. So bottom line, we started to look at other players. And thanks again for your introduction, Nadim, to Chandra. This was the beginning of the process. So we realize, building trust is about the team essentially. You know, so obviously you say, is it too good to be true? What is a team based off? You know, and Chandra have teachers of PhD teachers from UFT. So just that is a nice pedigree when you start to speak, you know, so you know that you're at the right place. And a lot of people of this group also on the commercial side are extremely strong in financial modeling and the building cases. So the point is we spoke the same language. We came from the same world essentially, not only on finance but also on the technical side. And it was really reassuring, in fact, to be able to hand over this project to them. That's the core and it took. So thanks God,
Thank you.
CMHC gave us 24 months to implement the plan, because we was a pioneer in the area. Just this solution was very innovative, and manufacturers didn't want to design it, didn't want to take the risk, didn't know how to base off what was the cost. So it was it was stressful simply, and to bring the project to completion and be able to finally get a good budget, you know. And Chandra said we started with a budget that was conservative, and we were able to generate some savings at the end. So that is a great achievement on the CapEx side. And on the OpEx, we were able to measure some benefits. We will talk about this later, I assume. But it was done in different steps. It took 18 months to deliver the project. So bottom line, this is why we use efficiency capital, and we are glad we did.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I did want to commend Benoit and Nico and Hermel and Rachel for that matter. They took the risk. The solution we proposed initially, as I said, it was going to be individual heat pumps. It moved to a centralized air-to-water heat pump, and Eastern Canada had never seen an air-to-water centralized heat pump ever installed. This is the first ever installation. So we couldn't, as Benoit said, we couldn't find contractors. We couldn't find suppliers. We managed to get it all done. And that's great, this thing. And we did it on time, within time. Like, we had a specific timeline to work with, and we achieved it. So congratulations to you, Ben.
Fantastic. And Benoit, you could speak to the operating expense savings that you're starting to see as well. Like, feel free to share. Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Yes, I was trying to bring I was trying to bring the camera on one other end, so that
All
you
good.
can see it's more lively. So in terms of savings, you were
Yes,
asking. Yeah, so we
exactly. Yeah.
talked about the measures implemented, especially if we just focus on the larger project. It was done in 3 steps, you know. So we talked about the lighting, LED lightings, low flows, and programmable thermostat. We did also centralized air-to-water heat pumps. And finally, we installed some solar panels, which this became the closed loop and prevented to draw from the grid in order to generate our own preheating system and reducing drastically our energy. So we were heavily relying on gas, to generate to heat, to provide radiant heating and hot water tanks. So what we did is it was in 3 steps essentially. So over a period of 18 months, like we discussed, first we did the low-hanging fruits, the easier things to install, which is the lighting, the low flow fixtures, programmable thermostat. So that was done quickly. Then after we started to do the bigger the big part, which was designing and installing those air water heat pumps. So it took I would say nearly 12 months to do that. And we end up after finishing. So once we installed those central heat pumps, so now we were not relying anymore on gas, so we were preheating all the system, but from electrical, so from the electricity. So first we had to, before the solar panel were in place, remember there was 3 phases, the low-hanging fruit, then after the heat pumps, the central heat pumps, which was connected to the electricity. So needed, in fact, draw from electricity. So our bill increased on electricity, but the gas was reduced by 80% virtually, if not more. And then the last step, which was implemented for this winter, last winter, essentially in October, we installed all the solar panels and were able to do this closed loop and this time switch from electricity to solar powered preheating system. So the benefit has been gradual. We've not done the full cycle of benefits, but we've already experienced a significant reduction on the gas. The full benefit will be achieved, I want to believe, over a period of we need more time to expose and to reflect.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Fantastic.
but
That's
one element I wanted to add also is a performance. So I'm trying to find my numbers, but essentially, So for SAC2, the plan is to reduce 58% of energy consumption and 50% of GHG reduction.
55% of GHG.
Aha,
Yeah.
more.
Fantastic. And that's above and beyond the 40% that CMHC requires. So these savings just go straight to your bottom line, I imagine.
But that's the point. This is in fact a critical component. So why do just CMHC requirement if we can do more? And that was also part of the change of direction. So we had a first plan for 40%, which was feasible. But when we met Efficiency Capital, they provided a business plan, a business case. We say, if you put some solar, you do the extra mile and this and that, then you will achieve way more of reduction. And I say we looked internally within our team, and if we don't have to raise capital for that and can leverage essentially debt and amortize it over a period of 20 years and have the flexibility to repay, to us it was a no-brainer because we are operators. What we want is reduce our OPEX and increase again the cash flow because this is the ultimate goal. So by updating, improving the cash flow, we improve the investors' performance. So that's always what we keep in mind.
Yeah, just to clarify
Mhm.
something here, this project had so they put without any capital contribution, the savings was approximately about $65,000 in the project, and their annual payments are around $61,000. So it's everything fully funded from energy savings alone. There is maintenance savings. There are other savings, but that's all going to the owner's case. So that's one thing I wanted to clarify that there.
Thank you, Chandra.
Yeah, and I think like you hit on something really important, Benoit, throughout what you were saying, which is it seems like there's quite a lot of involvement in executing an energy efficiency project for a property like this. And so being able to outsource that, I'm sure was helpful in, the big scaling that we did together in terms of your portfolio in being able to outsource that. So I think that's a really key point you hit on there. It's focusing on what you're good at, which is identifying these buildings, executing on transactions, buying them, renovating them, and then having someone like Efficiency Capital be an outsourced part of your team to execute on those projects.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
fantastic.
I'm glad to hear that you do accessibility now as well, which was new to me. So this is definitely a big. This is good.
It's all just happening
Yeah.
as we speak, Benoit, just in the last month.
Okay.
Yes,
Then we'll chat.
fantastic. And look, I mean, in terms of questions that haven't already been addressed, I would say, one question that came up for Chandra is, asking about if there's a project that's partway through construction or partway through being executed, if Efficiency Capital can step in on those cases. Chandra, if you want to speak to that. You're on mute, Chandra.
My apologies. Yeah. Yes, we can step into projects which are just under construction. We have had situations where we have had to buy back some of the equipment and so on and so forth. Not always. We prefer to come in earlier because it enables us to decide how to go in a particular way, help them actually create a lot of value. And this is the other piece, right? One of the, Benoit talked about SAC 1 and SAC 2. SAC 1, we stepped in as the construction was happening. So by the time we went in, we realized there are a lot of incentives they were eligible for, they never got. In the SAC 2 project, we got over $200,000 in incentives. That was another very interesting piece about it. So in terms of, yes, can we step into this thing? Yeah, we can. We normally don't take equity positions though. We prefer to stay because we want, like you take the equity upside. We don't want to be taking the risk as well, but we also don't want the reward. That's typically how we can do it.
Yeah, which is fair on both sides. Look, we're almost at the hour, and I think we've done really well on time. One of the things I'll mention here is that if anybody wants to have a further conversation with Efficiency Capital, we're going to send out a link. We've posted it on the chat here, and that'll provide you with priority access to Efficiency Capital. Now that they know that you've attended this webinar and have that baseline knowledge of what they do, it's gonna really help accelerate your conversations there. So there's a QR code we're putting up. Feel free to scan it. You can fill in a form and that'll allow you to get that priority access. We've also sent a link in the chat, and if you don't get either of those, we're going to send an email to all the attendees with that link. So that's going to be fantastic. Benoit, Chandra, any final thoughts you wanted to add here?
I think we've covered it all. Thank you.
Benoit? Maybe.
I think well, maybe I think if you have some plans to retrofit your buildings or also like Chandra said for new construction, I invite you to contact them. I mean, for sure, this is a good place to start for sure.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad that one of our clients is telling us to contact you. So that's always a good place to be in.
Of course. It's always nice to see a project at completion and it just got done. So that's always fantastic to see. And of course we're happy to chat. Maybe Benoit, your future plans in terms of projects or buildings going forward for you. What's it look like?
So for now, the focus is really to continue to execute the repositioning of what we have. So which already is time consuming, but we also have those new construction that are coming to fruition. So there's a first phase of a larger development in New Brunswick. So we have 45 units that is at DP stage. There's a 71 unit on Vancouver Island that also this time is shovel ready, waiting to start construction imminently. And I'm doing some consulting also to operators who need help with their repositioning plan. So if you need help, don't hesitate to reach out.
Amazing. Well, let's call it there. Benoit, Chandra, such a pleasure chatting with both of you again. This was a lot of fun. and really appreciate the time. For those attending, thank you very much, or for those watching this recording after, thank you very much for being here, and all the best until the next time.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Take care,
much.
guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.